Hey everybody, this is Andy with RS Xperience. I thought I would share with you 4 cars that I'm looking forward to in 2022, as well as my thoughts on new and used car pricing and availability. Hey, I'm Andy, a high-performance car enthusiast with a passion for well-engineered automobiles. I love to drive mountain roads with like-minded enthusiasts, along with sharing driving tips and techniques in my Porsche GT3 RS and BMW M2 CS. So the first car I'm looking forward to in 2022 is the Porsche GT4 RS. About 2 weeks ago, I did a video on 5 things I like about that car and a few that I don't. Check out that video. But the GT4 RS is a car that I am definitely interested in. We should see reviewers, YouTubers, the YouTubers out there, those reviews sometime in late February. So that's coming up really soon. And what I'm interested to learn about there is not just the sound, because it has that GT3 engine, but also its handling. Yeah, its performance, we know that's going to be good, the horsepower, etc. But I'm really interested in the handling, since they really didn't do too much with the suspension or the tires on that car. Second car I'm interested in is the new Porsche GT3 RS. Now, you may say, well, 2022? And that's kind of what I was thinking as well. My thoughts have been leaning on a March 2023 announcement at the Geneva Motor Show, or potentially a September 2022 Frankfurt Motor Show. But there's been some rumblings lately where some folks think it's going to be released March of this year. I don't. I could be wrong, and we may find out real soon on that. So the new GT3 RS, in my opinion, is going to be all about downforce and track time. I think this thing is going to have aero and downforce that's going to be like off the charts compared to, say, my 2019 GT3 RS. I think we're going to see a huge change there. Now, there's another piece where they could surprise us with a new engine. Again, there's been some rumors of potentially a 4.2 liter engine that may put out somewhere around 560, 570 horsepower, maybe even a little bit more. That will be one of those golden nugget things, similar to with the GT4 RS, and they threw that GT3 engine in there. I'm not so sure that they're going to do that on the GT3 RS. It'll get a bump in horsepower, no less, even if it remains with the 4 liter that's currently in the car. But you're going to see huge differences in the Nürburgring lap times, as well as the downforce numbers. The third car that I'm looking forward to in 2022 is going to be the McLaren Artura. If you recall, I mean, heck, it's probably been almost a year ago now. Again, we'll put a link in the description or up on the screen here. I did how I would configure a McLaren Artura, and this car has been delayed. It's going to be about a year. I think originally we were looking at those cars to be August, September of 21. And now I think we're not going to see those cars until sometime in Q2, mid to late Q2. We should see a driving reviews of those cars. With the YouTubers, that should be coming out here probably in, I'm going to say this summer, maybe in the June timeframe. We should start to see reviews on that car. And the last car that I'm interested in seeing in 2022 is the new Chevrolet Corvette Z06. So this is the C8 generation Z06. This thing is going to be a beast, okay? We already know it has 670 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque out of a 5.5 liter flat plane crank V8. Well, that's a mouthful. And the thing will rev to 8,600 RPMs. I think some folks have been saying out there that they're wondering how close will this sound Ferrari-ish with that flat plane crank V8 and then revving to 8,600. If you recall, the Ferrari 458 Italia with the V8 rev to 9,000 RPMs. So I think this car is going to be wild. I can't wait to start seeing those reviews on this car. I think the biggest issue with this car is going to be you ain't going to be able to get one, okay? If your name hasn't already been on the list for the last few years, they're going to be tough to get. And those that are getting are probably going to go with a $100,000 ADM, regardless of what the GM memo said to the dealers. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It really helps me to grow the channel and bring you more videos. Just as a heads up, both Ford and GM have recently sent notes to their dealers to stop charging ADM, which is additional dealer markup. So, you know, if the car costs 80 grand, they're throwing like 50, 70 on top. So if you want to buy it, you got to pay, you know, 150 grand for the car. They're telling them not to do it, but it's not going to hold weight with the dealer franchises. It's a media marketing play, right? So people will say, oh, look, the dealers are trying to, the manufacturers are trying to control it. It's the dealers that are out of control. So the manufacturers are trying to wipe their hands of it. That's all that is. So I'm going to add a little footnote here on cars I'm looking forward to. And it has to do something with, it has to do with electrification. At the moment, I'm not a huge electric car fan. I think they play a role, and especially in the commuter running errands, I think they're ideal. You're a sports car enthusiast, you want to go to track mountain roads, I think it's going to take a while for the electric to catch on. But there are two vehicles that I think will be really interesting to see how they catch on, because I think this can help to accelerate growth in the electric market. And that's the upcoming Ford F-150 Lightning. This truck, we all know that recently Ford announced that they're going to double production since they got so many pre-orders for that vehicle. And then shortly thereafter, right, GM announced, I think it's Silverado, we probably won't see it for a little while yet, that they're going to have it. And I think in those two vehicles, in that segment, if those things can catch on and they really sell, I think that's going to be an accelerant for people wanting to get into electric cars. I don't have a whole lot to say here other than I think it's going to be Q3, maybe even late Q3 before we start to see any easing in the supply chain space. And that goes whether it's semiconductor or just supply chain, right? I mean, you all are going to the grocery store, you see shelves that are empty, you go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, you know, the issues that you have. Even folks that are doing remodeling in their homes, and I've recently done some remodels on bathrooms in my home, and toilets, tubs. I mean, everything was like forever to get, and I think that's going to be a little while yet before that stuff eases. So I'm going to say late Q3 before we see an easing. Doesn't mean it's going to go away. It's all fixed. I think we'll just start seeing some things starting to release and starting to come through. So new car inventory. Here's where I think we're going to see probably the biggest change out of this whole supply chain, whatever that's been going on for the past year or more. And that is, I think the days of dealers having 90 plus days of inventory, or these big, you know, Toyota, Kia 400 cars on their lot and stuff like that, I think those days are gone. I think the dealers have found that, you know, not having to do heavy discounts on their cars, etc., be a little more leaner on that discounting is probably going to be okay for them, and they can still make money, whether it's, I say, the dealers and manufacturers. But I think those days of the huge, now what is that going to be, from, you know, 700 cars to 200 cars or whatever? I don't know the number. I just don't think you're going to see it return ever to have that type of volume on their lots. A piece that I touched on there was also about the prices, is that I think discounting on new cars, it will return, but again, it's not going to return to where it was. And I don't care what happens to the interest rates, I don't care what happens there. I don't think you're going to see that return to those level of discounts. I think there'll be one change or one set of, say, discounting that may occur in the under $80,000, $100,000 range. And I think there's going to be a different, lesser discounting that's going to occur in the greater than, the 80, 100,000 discount. But I don't think you're going to see any considerable discounting going on in new car inventory for a while. When I say a while, in the greater than 100, it's going to be a year or more before you see any discounting coming there. So with regard to ADM, so additional dealer markup, I think it's not going away. Again, I'm going back into supply. If we have a limited supply with super high demand, I don't think, right now, people, what are they charging? 20, 30 grand on a Telluride? If you want to buy a Telluride, when the supply catches up there, I think those things will come back down. They may still be $2,000 to $5,000. It won't be MSRP until there's plenty of inventory, and that discounting I spoke about earlier, I don't think we're going to see a lot of discounting. Same thing's going to happen on even the higher end cars where there are markups right now. I think it's not going to change much until that supply catches up. Another thing I think we're going to see is on the smaller manufacturers. In this case, I'll pick on Porsche just because we know I'm a Porsche fanboy, right? I don't think they're dealers, and I could be wrong, right? This is just my prognostication, what Andy thinks. But I think the days of a dealer, even the big dealers in the US, having 20, 30 911s, a bunch of 718s on their lots, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think you're going to see the Macans. I think you will see base Taycans. I think the lower end entry level models, maybe a base 718, you might see several of those, but everything else is pretty much going to be like made to order. I think all the cars are going to be, okay, here's an allocation, build your car comes in, it's already sold, it's a dealer car. I think the manufacturers will give the dealers some highly spec'd cars to show customers what's possible when you go to configure your car. Oh, what does that look like if I get this? Oh, well, let me show you in this car over here. So they'll have these like demo models in the showrooms to help customers, but there's not going to be a plethora of cars. Again, this is one of those I don't think that's going to happen in those small manufacturer space. A footnote here that applies to both new and used car is about pricing. And the reason I don't believe it's going to change much is because, as you all know, the market is flush with a ton of cash, right? Not just between, the Treasury buying up a zillion dollars worth of bonds and all of that. If you've been paying any attention to the stock market the last few years, from the dip to going up, people have made a ton of money in the stock market probably over the past year or more, and companies have also done really well. Even through the pandemic, companies have done quite well. So not only has that increased their share price, which is great, but you say a shareholder, but those employees at those companies who get restricted share, stock options, etc., the value of that has gone up. Their salaries have gone up. The bonuses that are going to be paid out are going to increase over last year. So those of you out there that may not get the big bonuses or those types of things, just do know that come March, when the bonuses hit, there's going to be a ton of cash out there, and there is absolutely no reason for these dealers to reduce the pricing of their car because there's a ton of cash and there's a lot of new players in the game. Let's move to used car inventory. I don't think we're going to see a material change to used car inventory pricing for probably, I'm going to say, for most of this year. Could potentially even be through the end of the year. And the reason being is, my logic is, and I can be wrong, let me know what you think, put it in the comments down below, is that until the new car supply gets there so people can buy new cars to then trade in their car on the new car to then increase used car inventories, I don't see used car pricing really changing all that much. I just don't. Unless interest rates do something crazy, which I don't think they're going to do. Yeah, we know there's going to be a couple increases coming by March or whatever, but they're going to be like quarter points. So unless there's some huge change going on in that area, in that space, I don't see used car prices changing much of any this year. So if you're thinking about trading in your car, maybe you want to sit on the cash or wait a little bit before you buy a new car, your used car is probably worth as much as it's ever gonna be worth right now, with the exception of, those extreme exotic cars, right? We know a Carrera GT is gonna be $3 million in 3 years. So once the inventory, the new inventory, helps to then replenish, people trading in, replenish the used car inventory, I think what we're going to see happen probably later this year, maybe even sooner, is we're going to see a plateau on used car pricing. I actually think we're starting to see that now. Or we're going to see a plateau where we're not going to see used car prices continue to go up. But they're not going to go down. I don't think there's going to be like a stock market correction where you're going to see a 10, 20, 30% drop in pricing, right? So in other words, a car that's worth $100,000 now isn't going to be, $80,000 a year from now. A used car. I don't think that's going to happen. I think over maybe 2 years, 2+ years, we could start to see a 10%, maybe a little more, 10 to 20% decrease in used car pricing on the higher end cars. Obviously, the lower end cars might see a change in pricing happening sooner, but I just don't see a crash coming on this used car pricing. I just don't, unless everybody's offloading all their used cars and the inventory just gets totally flooded. But if the new supply can't keep up with that demand, I'm not so sure, and I think that's still a couple years away. I don't think there's going to be much of a change there. For more information on the used and new car market, check out Four Wheel Trader YouTube channel. We'll put a link in the description below. And they talk a lot about the new and used car market, so you can check them out. You can also check out Your Advocate Alliance, another YouTube channel that talks about this as well. Those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts that's going to happen in this space, especially on the new and used car inventory? Put your comments in the description below. I'll be back in early 2023 to see how well I did. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay healthy and stay safe.